Looking downfield, launching downfield, going for it all! It is caught! Bears win! His feet is killed! On a big play! And a stiff arm! George Kittle! Flag fly! And Manning is going to hit one. There's a flag. That
Ladies, gentlemen, and all those in between or outside of it, welcome to Monday Night Mock Drafts with Evan, right here on the Fantasy Football Network, coming to you every Monday evening until week 1 of the NFL season. I am your host, Evan Sather. Tonight, my guest is a brilliant dynasty mind in the fantasy football industry. He is the main man behind the Dynasty Degens. He's also part of the Dynasty Rewind Network on YouTube. You know him best as Nerd Boy Takes. Please welcome to the show, Mike Lamoureux. Mike, glad you could finally join my show as well. We've had you on the Fantasy Football Network before, Friday Mocks, which we're now calling Drafting After Dark. Glad to have you on a Monday night, my friend. How are you?
Evan, I appreciate it, man. That intro got me hyped. You're a hype man. You're bringing all the energy coming in. I am very appreciative, and I love being on the show, man. Thank you for having me.
Glad to have you on. I figured it'd be interesting to bring a dynasty mind to the redraft format. I can't believe it's the end of July already. Now we're starting to get into the redraft format. I've just been starting with the 2 quarterback leagues under the presumption that those are going to be the more hardcore ones that might draft a little earlier than the ones that get started in your office league or your family and friends league. So it should be interesting right now with ADP kind of all messed up from Scott Fishbowl.
Yeah, it's fun, man. I mean, obviously these are my roots, redraft is really where I started, as a kid playing redraft with family, friends, and then eventually work friends and just really having fun with it and wanting more. That's where Dynasty kind of plugged and played, where it was like, I need this all year round. I need to play fantasy football in the summertime. I can't just sit there on my hands and wait for redraft leagues to start anymore. So I always love this time of the year. It's really fun. And there's a lot of exploitable things with the Dynasty mind that you can have fun with in redraft.
For sure, because with Dynasty, I always make sure to go out of my way to take the break between January and February because that's still the playoffs, Super Bowl's happening, no teams are making any moves, so that's my little vacation from the format. There's guys way more hardcore about it than I am that'll make these big blockbuster trades in between those months. I'm not that ballsy about it, but even then, you don't need to go back that far. You can start looking at March, looking at the draft in April, and that'll start to give you that picture of what the redraft leagues will start to look like even before training camps get started, right?
Yeah, and then obviously there's some shifts and changes and stuff like that. You're looking at somebody like Malik Neighbors not really put it on the pup list, and then players make an extraordinary catch and they're jumping around, and it's just. I think that it is fun. You can look at these ADPs from earlier in the year. You can get values that way. And then obviously things happen where they shift and fall. And I think that is exploitable as well. So there's always a fun time, no matter what time of the year it is to draft.
Absolutely. Tonight, we're going to be going with, just like we did last week, but with 10 teams, 2 quarterbacks, 2 running backs, 3 wide receivers, 1 tight end, 2 flex spots, a kicker, a DST. And I did make a slight typo. We're not going to have 6 bench spots. We're going to have 5 instead. So just a slight typo on my part, but that's okay because that's not going to stop us from having fun. But I think we should get into it. Mike, are you ready, my friend?
Let's kick it off, baby. Send it.
Absolutely. Let's do it. So Frito Bandito, our good buddy's going to kick us off here. We got 30 seconds on the clock. It should be a little easier to see this draft board now that we have two less teams that are drafting. ADP hasn't really changed all that much, and Bijan Robinson goes at the 101. Yeah, I mean, of course, he's going to be the man in Atlanta. I don't think Brian Robinson Jr. is going to be used at all like Tyler Algier, especially because I got the new coaching staff with Kevin Stefanski, who used Nick Chubb like a true bell cow. Is that how you see Bijan Robinson being used this year?
Yeah, I think that you're looking at, obviously, the other Robinson being somebody that is that direct handcuff, that player that, realistically isn't going to get a lot of, he doesn't offer a different dynamic to Bijan Robinson. I think that he might get some goal line touches. Maybe he just essentially takes a breather every once in a while. I'm on the clock and I'm going to take JSN right here and keep it moving. And there is, obviously, there's a conversation to be had when you're talking about Jahmyr Gibbs or Bijan Robinson. I think I always have this conversation. Who do you want? I mean, I think I personally want Gibbs, to be honest with you. I think that we saw him lockstep and really have the same value as Bijan Robinson when he was sharing the backfield with somebody like David Montgomery, who's got a lot more juice than anybody that they both have been playing with now. And you got Pacheco in there. He doesn't scare me. I don't think they're going to be used the same, and I think that it's wheels up for Gibbs too this year.
I am so glad to hear you say that too, Mike, because I have been a Gibbs over Bijan guy myself. I updated my 2026 redraft rankings not too long ago, and I do have Gibbs above Bijan this year. I like Gibbs' situation a little bit better just because I think the Lions have the better offense, and Gibbs offers a little more catching passes and whatnot. He's faster than Bijan, so that's not to say Bijan doesn't deserve to be considered a top 3 running back, but I need to see how the Kevin Stefanski offense translates to the Atlanta Falcons' talent, which I think will be fine, but I just like Gibbs a little better. If you had to pick one, that's the way I'd go too.
Yeah, and then you're looking at the volatility of that team, and you're looking at, obviously, I like Jared Goff and the coaching staff and everything in place to really be more stable than, what are we going to do? Tua, Penix? I mean, realistically, that could be up and down. They could have a couple different coaches changes in there, and the offense might not be run efficiently. And I think that it's a hard tap, but I know what Gibbs is going to offer me. I don't normally do this, but I think I'm going to go double wide receiver here. And
okay.
It's not necessarily the build I go for. I'm usually a running back first type guy. Like if we're going in the first, I might tap a JSN, and then I just don't know if I'm going to jump because we're looking at the board. You took Taylor and then Cook went. If there was somebody like that available, I might tap a Cook there, but I'm not going to reach on somebody like Walker or Genty for redraft personally.
I don't blame you at all because you can wait a little bit. We only have 10 teams and it's still a 2-quarterback league. So, I mean, the QBs are going to go first. Gosh, Mike, I remember 10 years ago when the game of football was a little bit different. Most leagues were a little bit different. We didn't have most leagues as 3 wide receivers, and running backs used to matter a lot more. Like you could go RB, double tap that in the first 2 rounds and that would be perfect. But now that the game is a little more wide receiver centric, you just don't see that as much anymore, right?
Yeah, I mean, you're still seeing the shift as far as running backs outscoring wide receivers, especially in settings. Even if you have full PPR, there's still that shift in usage where you're talking about guys being hyper efficient. I don't know if that shifts at all this year. Obviously, there's a top 5 or 6 running back tier that I think you have to grab. And if you miss it, I'm okay waiting a little while and hoping for the best. I'm looking right now. I know these guys might be listening in, and I don't really care. Oh, that's my guy right there. A chain. Really, if you're looking at somebody in a PPR setting, he could be the entire offense this year. And I think if he stays fully healthy, he has the possibility of being an RB1 overall this year. I mean, Miami to me is that ugly offense that can produce, like we saw, you mentioned Nick Chubb. Nick Chubb produced on awful offenses. Year after year, we're talking about awful offenses. And in redraft, you know what? I'll take an oldie, and I'm just going to say Barkley is due for some positive regression this year, I think.
You know, it's funny, like Saquon Barkley had his 2,000-yard rushing season in 2024, and my big question about Barkley was, are we really going to be mad if he only gets like 1,400 rushing yards in a season? Because that would be the drop-off for Barkley. And how can you be mad at that? Because that's still RB1 numbers.
Yeah, I think that it's almost – I just did a podcast that's going to be coming out in a couple of days right before this one, and it was, the fades of the first 3 rounds. And I think that was a conversation with somebody that had a massive workload. You actually took him in the second round. I'm going to take this pick, and then we'll keep it moving. I'm going to take I'll take a 10-team. Man, I don't know if I love this. Let me take all the old guys real quick.
Hey.
And I think, there's a direct correlation with obviously the guy that has the most carries translating to a dip year, and it's almost guaranteed. We saw it with Josh Jacobs. We saw it with CMC a couple of years. Derrick Henry is the only guy that's really, he's an alien, so he's really skipped over the regression years after high usage. But it is, your body goes through a lot, and I think that, it's almost like he became a value. I think that Barkley last year was a first-round pick. He was going where CMC went this year. And CMC to me is a fade because of the usage, just like Barkley was a fade last year because of the usage. It's not a science, but I think that you can look at it as a trend where these guys get beat up and they don't necessarily have the efficiency they had the year before.
Yeah, no, perfectly said. Just because, and you went 2 older guys at running back, there's no reason to skip out on Saquon and Derrick Henry right now because those guys are not showing any signs of slowing down. Obviously, we're probably never going to see another 2,000-yard season out of Barkley ever again, but that doesn't mean he's not a valuable running back anymore. He has not shown that he's losing any step as you're about to make your 5th-round pick here. That's what I wanted to commend you about, too, because Derrick Henry is still the man at age 32. He looked great last year. I am not scared of Adam Randall. I am not scared of anybody behind Barkley, including Tank Bigsby, as he had that one great game in London for the Jaguars and then stunk up the joint ever since. I don't know where people are getting the Bigsby hype from, probably because he's the next guy in line behind him. But no, I mean, it's not going to be Will Shipley either. So, yeah, go get Barkley if he's there. Like 3rd-round value in a 10-team league, pretty freaking good.
Yeah, I mean, pretty freaking good. And then you're looking at, I mean, even if this is the last year that he has this value, I can't imagine he's going to dip, especially with the fact that they don't have A.J. Brown anymore. I think we're going to see a run-heavy team. And we've seen that. But the only concern is, the tush push and really getting your touchdowns vultured. But ultimately, it's like I see all these guys that are still here. And I think that, man, I'm talking this through right now. And I'm looking at
I love the Colston Loveland pick, by the way, as much as I hope he lives up to tight end 1 expectations. And I love McConkey as a wide receiver 3.
I think that McConkey, obviously with McDaniel, you're looking at a hyper-efficient guy in the sense that he works on motion and he just fits the mold as a good riser as far as redraft goes. I think that, Ibuka too. I think that these guys, Burden, Ibuka, McConkey, I don't know if I'm going Jameson Williams there, but that's more of like a later hope and a prayer. This guy doesn't fit the mold as a consistent contributor. I need consistency in my first pick, so I'll take the boom bust later.
Yeah, no, I'm perfectly fine with taking the boom bust later because that's all J-Mo has been on the Detroit Lions. He's been very volatile as a fantasy option. And even when he gets his big targets, the production side is entirely different. It's just been strange with J-Mo's career, even getting in trouble for strange technicalities on gambling laws. But, I mean, I won't dive into that rabbit hole right now. I wanted to get back to you about a question for HN I didn't get a chance to ask based off of what Mike mentioned. Classic Mike says that Dolphins O-line scares the crap out of me for HN. It's really, really bad. Yes, and I agree with Mike on this. It is really, really bad, but it's not Arizona Cardinals bad or dare I say, Seattle Seahawks bad, despite the fact that they can actually have an offense that actually works and win a Super Bowl. But I would say Achane is going to be getting a lot of the dump off passes from Malik Willis. Like, there's no reason to doubt otherwise that Achane is that offense until any of their wide receivers, or dare I say, Greg Dulcich, steps up.
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, you have a mobile quarterback and you have somebody that can extend plays a little bit, and really, being flushed out of the pocket might not be a bad thing for A-Chain. He can kind of work and almost be that extension of a slot receiver in the way that he can get those dump offs and help him out and bail him out in situations where he's really just no other options. Because you mentioned Dulcich or nobody at this point. I guess I'll tap. Man, dude, it's kind of an ugly area right now. All right. I guess I'll do it.
It's starting to get there. Gotta grab gotta grab a QB at some point. So, Mike, I gotta hear what you think about Bo Nix, because I'm seeing a lot of disrespect for him in ADP as well as other people's rankings when putting Bo Nix. Nobody seems to believe that he's a legit QB7, which he's been for the first 2 seasons in his career. Why is he not a top 10 quarterback if you think he's not?
I think that, Bo Nix has continually been a love-hate guy for me all through his NFL career. And obviously I'm a big college guy. I think that I watched him consistently and just an older prospect coming out. I think that he was overdrafted initially as far as, somebody that I think didn't deserve first round. But you got to transition and adjust to that. And I think that's exactly what I did over time. I'm going deep into ADP right now. I'm looking around, trying to get into a take while I pick. It's really a stressful thing to do sometimes. I don't love doing it. I think that I got to take Demont right here. But yeah, so I think that initially Bo Nix was a fade for me. And I think now you have to adjust and you have to look at it in the lens of, they're building around Bo Nix. They are, taking guys and making that team very viable. The defense is for real. The O-line is improving. You just took Jalen Waddle. Obviously, you're adding so much to be more successful. Bo Nix is a little scary with the ankle, and I get it if you want to fade him off of that. But at this range, he's the value. I think that Bo Nix, to me, offers the same ceiling as a Brock Purdy, as a Trevor Lawrence. I think that Bo Nix, in the grand scheme of things, probably has a little more success than Patrick Mahomes in this stage. You know what? I'll take the dip on Bo Nix all day, and I think that he is not getting the accolades and the credit. I think that if he was healthy, he'd be in the Super Bowl, and I think that he probably would have gave the Seahawks a better game than the Patriots did. And I'm a Patriots fan, so.
Yeah, God, that must have been a rough loss, though, considering that it was not quite like the 85 Super Bowl when the Patriots got trounced by my Bears back then, but it wasn't even a close game. The Seahawks just had it in the bag from like the first half.
Yeah, I mean, to an extent, I really didn't expect them to be there in the first place. So it was kind of like, I'm just happy that they're here. And that was really what it was all about. But at that time and that, once you actually get there, you know what I'm going to do right here? Stand on business.
Oh.
And that is chop wood, carry water. My guy right there, Parker Washington. I think that I will absolutely take him in this range when we're looking at, it's kind of a dead zone now for these wide receivers. I think if you missed on wide receiver, you're really going deep into the bag. You're on the clock right now. Tony Pollard slept on. I don't know why Tony Pollard everyone thinks that he's turning to dust. Is still a hyper efficient guy and is really missing the age cliff right now.
Yeah, I'm a lot lower on Tony Pollard than consensus. I don't think he has what it takes to be a lead guy anymore. I still think he's going to be the lead in this backfield, but I just am not expecting a 1,000-yard season out of Pollard anymore. I think if Tyjae Spears stays healthy, he's definitely going to share a lot more work with him. I just think he's finally over the 1,000-yard, 240 carry days anymore. I don't think he's getting all that anymore. If that, and that's under the assumption that Nicholas Singleton works out. Now, if it all goes to shit, yeah, Tony Pollard's going to be getting more work and then I'll look like an idiot. But I am banking on Pollard starting to dwindle here. I just, yeah, he looked fine for what he did last season, but I just don't think it's sustainable. Maybe it's just bias on my part, but who knows?
Yeah, I mean, I think that where he's going ADP wise, it's kind of baked into his value. You are kind of taking a chance and hoping for the best, especially like when you're looking at guys like Alec Pierce and Ricky Pearsall, Chris Godwin. It is like a by chance, and things have to fall right for these guys to really work in a redraft format.
For sure. So, I wanted to take a moment to shout out Dynatize, who, if I'm not mistaken, Mike, you are a part of the Dynatize network on Twitter. I was wondering if you wanted to tell the audience a little more about Dynatize.
Yeah, so Dynatize is actually kind of taking over the community right now. I think that when you look at a platform, they are offering almost everything that you hope for. And I know that different platforms offer a facet when it comes to rankings, when it comes to charts and graphs. And I gotta make this pick real quick. I gotta lock in real quick. But yeah, and let me just. I'm scrolling. I hate this. I hate where I'm at. I don't like this. It's gross. It's yucky.
It's depth, and you have to swallow that pill.
Yeah. I'll bet on Dowdle getting that McCarthy treatment. But yeah, no, Dynatize. So essentially, if you go to Dynatize.com and you really check out their platform, you can get almost everything that you want. From an analytics side, everything, charts, graphs. They have war charts. They have mock drafts and anything, upwards of like you look at different charts and really plug in the values and everything that you want. I think that we're looking at a platform that is probably going to take over and consume everything else. And I think that anybody that is new or not privy to their platform, go check it out. Test run it, and then really just give it a try. You'll probably change over whatever it is that you use right now and go over there, because I think that it offers, a little bit of everything and a big edge when it comes to redraft and dynasty in any format that you're using.
This is becoming quite the competitive market that Dynatize is into. So, and what's nice about it too is that it's covering more than just fantasy football, betting, baseball, basketball, and more sports. So it's just Dynatize.com, right?
Yep, Dynatize.com. And really, you're right. It offers multiple sports. You can go into football and you can really get into any side of it. You can look at Vegas lines. You can look at the betting. You can also go in there and you can look at, like different charts. You can go against empty air yards and the year. You can plug in a player and look at their regression. You can look at how they're rising. ADP values, you can see how high people are going, and you can put in the date and really just check out either ADP from 2023 to present year and just look at the trends. It's a really good way to get an edge in fantasy football. If you want to go and make a trade, you can plug into their calculator. I do my rankings over there, so you can see my personal rankings that are dropping this week. And there's consensus rankings. There's a lot of fun stuff, man. And I think that it will be a big riser when it comes to the fantasy community in the next couple months.
So looking in the ranking section of Dynatize, are people able to pick the expert consensus, but people can just look at your individual rankings on there too, right?
Yeah, they'll be able to look at individual rankings. I haven't plugged those in yet. So right now they're consensus, but you can look at the different creators separately. You can look at their posts. You can go in once you're actually a member over there and really just kind of like dig into like Joe Orco and different guys in the community that have their own posts, that have their own personal rankings. So it's really just like a good way to dive deep into some of this stuff that is behind like major paywalls in a lot of communities.
Love to hear that. So Yeah, so we'll be sure to plug this again after the show. Dynatize.com. Be on the lookout for Mike's rankings to get posted there very soon under the rankings section and expert consensus, where looks like they have a pretty good crew there right now. Haven't spoken with a lot of them myself, but I think they're pretty lucky to have you on board too, with the great work you've been doing with Dynasty Degens as well.
I appreciate it, man. Really, it is kind of like the idea that you can build something from the ground up. And I think that this is already in place. And, getting good people to go in there and really just plug and play and mess around with it. And I strongly endorse it. I've been using it for the last couple of weeks, and I can't say enough good things about it. So if you have a chance, anybody listening right now, go check it out. DM me, and I'll definitely try to help you out and get involved in there as well.
Love to hear it. That's Dynatize.com one more time, folks. So getting back to this mock draft as you're making your 14th round pick, I wanted to get back to you, too, about Parker Washington after you make this pick as well. So, because I gotta hear from you. Should I be believing in the Parker Washington hype? Because the Jaguars did just trade for Jacoby Myers last year. And it's to my understanding that it's going to be the Brian Thomas Jr. and Jacoby Myers show, because they have theoretically the best sets of hands on the team. They got to figure out how to work in Travis Hunter on offense. And then Parker Washington is like, okay, now how many targets can he compete for along with tight end Brenton Strange? Where Parker Washington going in the 9th round, where is the hype coming from, and is he actually going to earn more targets than their top receivers right now?
Well, I think that Parker Washington has that slot role set in place, and I think that that's a coveted role when it comes to that offense. And year 2 Cohen, there's so much trust attached to the actual offense when it comes to Trevor Lawrence. I think that he relied on him a lot in the second half of the season. I just think that we're looking at a player that is producing at a good level and has a big enough sample size that a lot of people aren't taking seriously. And we saw this with a lot of guys like Amon-Ra St. Brown, where he was drafted late. He essentially wasn't considered a safe pick. And I'm not going to say that he's going to come in and be an Amon-Ra St. Brown by any means. I don't want people to confuse that in the sense that I think that that's what his ceiling is. I just think that we're looking at a player that has shown he belongs in the NFL and that is going to be a set it, forget it major piece of an offense that is going to overproduce and succeed. We're looking at Trevor Lawrence, massive rise last year. And then we're talking about, hold on, am I on the clock? Oh, I'm gonna auto this. I'm gonna auto this. I don't care. We're talking about my guy Parker. And who did I get? Oh, Shakir. Gross. All right. Well, let me at least take myself off auto pick right now. But yeah, I think that there's a combination of seeing enough usage out of the slot last year. Cohen year 2, I think that he's a set and forget it. We're seeing in camp that he is going to be that guy that's the main slot in an offense that is profiling as one of the top 5 in the NFL this year. There's just too much going on there to fade. I think that offense is, you got to have a piece of it. And I think that I'm okay going with Parker Washington over somebody like Jacoby Myers or Travis Hunter for sure.
Or even Brian Thomas Jr.?
I don't know if I'm going to be there because they are very different guys. Brian Thomas Jr. is an X guy, obviously an X wide receiver. I'm trying to look. You know what? I'm just going to take. Hold on.
Well, we're in the final 2 rounds where, in theory, you could draft a kicker or DST, but you can also choose not to.
Ideally, that's something that I wait for the roster cuts. I think that, I will miss in redraft on a kicker and defense because I really am okay like streaming in redraft with those positions through and through. I'm okay having a different kicker week to week based on matchups. And if it's a deep league, but in a 10-team league, I'm not taking a defense. I have 12 other defenses to choose from.
Yeah, most definitely. I think it's becoming a lot more trendy now with the serious redraft folks that, yeah, if you're planning on streaming defenses and kickers on a weekly basis anyway, I'd say that's fine. Me personally, I still like to grab who I think is going to be really strong week 1 and then just go from there. And there might be like a defense like the Rams that I genuinely believe in because of how strong they are pretty much an every week start until their bye week. And then you got to figure out who you can start in the bye week and so on and so forth. So I'll be curious to see what you do with your last round pick here as you've gone. Well, I mean, Shakir was the auto pick, but Omar Cooper could work out. Woody Marks could provide some strong PPR value that David Montgomery cannot. So that'll be interesting to see. And now let's see what I can do in this last pick here. Oh, God, Dan Bailey. How the hell is he on this?
I don't love that Shakir. I don't love taking any. I guess I would take DJ Moore at value, but that offense is not. I'm not spending even a 15th round pick on Shakir and a 10-teamer by any means. I don't think that's. But I like this team as a whole. I think that a good blend of production and risers, ideally, guys that either are taken. I like the late rookie risers. If in redraft, I think that all the rookies are easy taps in late rounds because we always see after the bye week, there's usage. There's these guys drafted on bad teams like Denzel Boston, Omar Cooper that will at least get their chance, and you might strike gold with one or two of them. And I think that they're worth the tap, or they're going to become an empty bench spot that is valuable in a redraft. I always like to have two guys that I can drop at any moment for like transitional week to week guys.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and yeah, outside of the Shakir pick, I don't mind at all grabbing a Denzel Boston or an Omar Cooper to say, just sit on them, let them sit on the bench and see if they ever turn into anything. Not that I'm counting on either rookie to be fantasy relevant in this season, but if the injuries happen and their respective quarterbacks have to throw them the football, you're going to be glad you have them because that's going to be some sneaky flex value on a week-to-week basis.
Definitely, man. Yeah.
So you took George Kittle at the 12-5, which he's been placed on the PUP and he's expected to come off of it sometime during training camp, if not the preseason. I'm not sure if that's going to happen, though, to be honest. I think we could be looking at Jake Tonges for the first 1 to 4 weeks. So if that's the case, then at least you can stick Kittle on IR and then just go stream tight ends in the meantime, which is not super high risk. Because the 49ers offense is still awesome, and you could probably get Tonjes for X amount of dollars on the fab and then just start him. But should redraft leagues be grabbing Jake Tonjes in the last round as like a sneaky second tight end?
I mean, I think that it's worth a stab, but I think tight end is really deep this year too. There's guys like Chigo Okonkwo. I don't know, was he even drafted in this?
I don't. Oh yeah, last round, auto picked by FLJRJ.
I mean that's somebody I would rather take over Tonges if you're going to go in the last round and get Chigo Okonkwo or Isaiah Likely or any of these guys. I think that they're likely win in the 12th round, but I think that if you're going to wait on tight end, Gadsden's going late. I think that a lot of people are fading him off of obviously. Njoku's over there. I couldn't even remember Njoku's name right now. Njoku just landed over there on a 1-year deal. I don't see that really taken away from somebody like Gadsden. If you're going to get him in the 12th, 13th round, I think I still want obviously the guy that's the athletic option in that offense. And Hunter Henry is always a set and forget it tap in this range too. Like, he's still going to be the tight end 1 for Drake May. I think that there's too much juice to say I'm going to wait for Tonges when you can get somebody in this range that is going to be the tight end 1 for the team still.
Yeah, because the Reardon guy they drafted this year is probably not going to be NFL ready, at least for a couple of seasons, if he turns into a prominent pass catcher for that offense. Because even with Hunter Henry being the big dude who can catch the ball pretty well, they still sucked in the red zone last year, which I'm sure you know all too well as a Patriots fan. I love the fact that Romeo Doubs got signed by the Patriots this year because they finally got their big-bodied red zone guy. So surely you're going to see Drake May building great red zone chemistry with Romeo Doubs, right?
I mean, I think that that team in general is going to have a higher offensive efficiency that they sorely missed. Obviously, they had Diggs and Booty last year, but like ultimately, the red zone was definitely difficult at times. There was a lot of Ramondre Stevenson, or there's a lot of field goals. It was just tough. The red zone efficiency was not necessarily their strong suit. They needed the big play to get into the end zone most of the time. And I think that you're going to see, a lot of passes now, and you're going to see like a lot of sets different. They were too predictable last year. So yeah, Dobbs, AJ Brown, big bodied guys that can definitely offer big targets in the end zone. And then you obviously still have Hunter Henry there. And I think that trio will offer a lot of touchdowns this year for sure.
Yeah, I'll be excited to see how the Patriots improve on offense this year, which, not to taunt you too bad about losing a Super Bowl. My Bears did the same thing 20 years ago against Peyton Manning's Colts. So I know what it's like to lose a Super Bowl in this lifetime. But yeah, like I said, though, I'll be excited to see what the Patriots do in the meantime. But I think the Patriots players that folks are most interested in is what role is Ramondre Stevenson still going to play versus Travion Henderson, who they drafted last year. So Stevenson, there's speculation that he might be overvalued by current redraft ADP, but honestly, like I could still see this being like a 60-40 split depending on who has the hot hand. What do you see this year for the backfield for the Patriots?
I still think Stevenson's the back you want in redraft. I think that he's still going to offer the usage that you were looking for as far as a running back. Travion Henderson is the hyper efficient guy that doesn't need a lot of targets or touches. Ideally, he still produces at a lesser clip, but Ramondre Stevenson does all the small things the right way. He's going to protect the quarterback. He still picks up on pass pro better than Travion Henderson. He understands defenses better. So Travion Henderson has a lot to learn. And I still don't think that he has the trust of Vrabel to the point where he's going to be in the game in these like high intensity, close games. I think that Ramondre, I'm going to keep confusing back and forth here. Ramondre is the guy that they're going to value in these situations, making him the guy that you want because ultimately he's going to be on the field a lot more. So I think that, Travion Henderson can exist and he might still improve on his value dramatically this year, especially in a dynasty format. But in redraft, I still want the guy outside of injury. Ramondre Stevenson is still going to be the guy on the field most of the time.
The Patriots sure have put a lot of trust in Stevenson over the years, considering the known fumbling problems he's had. Those typically get you benched quickly and or possibly demoted on the depth chart, if not outright cut. But Stevenson has been a reliable, skillful guy that the Patriots just cannot quit and should not quit because he still does offer some, at least RB2 value when he's got the hot hand. But I think it's like you said, Henderson at least will, Stevenson will be a guy that will be situational, but it seems to me like the consensus will be just, you want to draft Henderson over Ramondre because he's going to get the first touches.
Yeah, I mean, I think that if you're going to take Henderson, you got to understand that you're probably going to be either waiting a little while on this guy, especially in a redraft format, or you're trying to hope and pray that there's some consistency there because I still see him as a guy that's going to have a boom and bust type of trajectory for a running back. And his ADP is a little too spicy for me, especially in a redraft format for somebody that might not be producing week to week consistently.
Yeah, that's definitely understandable. Like the Patriots running backs are not guys that I'm going to be going out of my way to go get. But if he's my RB3, like with Andrew Korn, where he got Henderson in the 7th round, behind Achane and Breece Hall, I'm thrilled with having Henderson as my RB3.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that that's really what you want. You want somebody that, can sit on your bench for a little while or maybe him in your flex and you're hoping for the boom bust games. And then ultimately he can slide up into that consistent RB2 later in the season if he gets that improved efficiency.
Definitely. And I want to go down your team a little bit more just so we can see the depth that happened as well. So Rico Dottle will definitely split some work with Jalen Warren, but I don't think it's going to be anything that is going to be like must start on a weekly basis. It's going to depend on game script. It's going to depend on how well the Steelers are playing. Well, like if they're up big and they're just going to run out the clock, that's where Dowdle will get some meaningful carries that could get you a few points, making him flex worthy. But, when you don't get Jalen Warren like what Frito Bandito did in the 9th round, Dowdle at the 11-6, I'm pretty happy about. I'd still rather have Kyle Monangai over him, but I mean, is Dowdle going to be that much worse than Monangai at this range?
I mean, that's kind of up for debate. You have an ambiguous backfield, and it's really, I don't know. You don't know. Nobody really knows. You pretty much are betting on ADP at this point. Like I can't tell you if the Steelers are going to go for Dowdle over Jalen Warren in situations. We're going to find out like anybody else. And if you think that there's an analyst out there that can predict this stuff, give him his money, dude. Give him his flowers, whatever. If you can do that, you can do that. But, it's really difficult to predict, and you kind of have to stand on the best values. I think that Jalen Warren is probably the better pass catcher and somebody that Aaron Rodgers trusts. But like McCarthy has played with Rico Dowdle, and there's a relationship there, and maybe he trusts him a little more, and who knows how they're going to play this. But I think that Kyle Monangai still has a DeAndre Swift problem, and I think that Swift is better than all these guys that we're talking about right now personally. And I think that, when you're talking about somebody splitting carries, I'm not going to say I'm taking, Dowdle over Monangai, but there's still this same trajectory and the same likelihood that this guy hits just like Monangai does, because he's going against Swift and my guy's going against Jalen Warren. I think that I'll just take the guy going against Jalen Warren and hope for the best at this point.
I think that's pretty good logic to have because, obviously DeAndre Swift is better than Jalen Warren overall out there. If you've ever watched a Chicago Bears game, you definitely know this because Swift offers what Monangai can't, which is to be a lot more shifty. He's a better outside runner than Monangai. Kyle Monangai is very much like Isaiah Pacheco out there, coming from that same system of Rutgers running backs where they will plow right through you like they're running angry at the ground, like that style of running. Monangai's not going to get many passes thrown his way. He's not going to be expected to be shifty and speedy the way Swift is. It's the perfect 1-2 punch in the Ben Johnson offense. Even if Swift gets injured, Monangai's still not going to get the Swift volume either. They're just going to grab another guy like, dare I say, Britton Brown, or just look for another guy out there to pair up with Monangai that could take some pass-catching duties away from him. So, like Monangai's not somebody that I'm going to go above the 11th round in a 10-team league to grab because Axe 238 Doer unfortunately auto-drafted, and I think I could live with Monangai as my RB3, but I would much rather go grab Quinshon Judkins over, quite frankly, a lot of these running backs over Monangai.
I think even a Kenneth Gainwell is really like a sexy pick. I think that you just took him in the 12th round. Kenneth Gainwell, you talked about Bucky not necessarily being somebody that they trust. I think, when we looked at last year, he was somebody that was never on the goal line. He really didn't get any like meaningful carries when it came down to the team, when it was like in a crunch time situation. And I think that there's a lot to be said there. I think that Bucky, with his health injury, his health concerns, and then the usage, I think that Gainwell is somebody that they went and grabbed. They got him in, I always echo this, but they got him in like the first days of free agency. They went and sought him out. They said, we want Kenneth Gainwell on this team. It was like the second day of free agency, and they gave him a decent contract. I think that all that stuff has to be taken accounted for. And the fact that he is going this late and he might have decent standalone value just by himself, I think that, they're the Bucs like to use a 2 running back system, and I still think that Bucky's relevant. But if they work him in and out, and he showed the pass catching ability last year, they did the same thing with him and Jalen Warren last year, and it worked out very well for the Steelers. They didn't have a pass game. It was the Kenny Gainwell, Jalen Warren show up until the playoffs when they got exposed. But ultimately, he was a mainstay almost the RB or the wide receiver one for that team last year. You know, the way that he was receiving, he was the wide receiver one in a couple of games last year, you know, because he couldn't get the ball out to DK Metcalf on the outside. So if they use him the way that he was using the Steelers, this guy is somebody I'm taking over half of the guys before him at this point.
I wanted to highlight this column right here that I think everybody needs to keep an eye on when it comes to Kenneth Gainwell. Those are passing targets that he received from Aaron Rodgers last year. That's how bad that Steelers offense turned out to be before they got Michael Pittman and before they drafted Jeremy Bernard and all that. That is what Kenneth Gainwell, I should call him Kenny Gainwell, offers in an offense. And the fact that, like you just said, Mike, they signed Kenny Gainwell very quickly, and to the point where they made him an offer he couldn't refuse. Gainwell signed a 2-year, $14 million contract, averaging $7 million a year. That's not nothing. That's a big freaking deal. And Bucky Irving stands should be worried about that contract, because that means Bucky is not going to be the guy. He is never going to be the bell cow. They paid Gainwell too much.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I still believe in Bucky. I still think that you're looking at somebody that can revive his value a little bit, but I don't think that Gainwell's going away. You know, I don't think that you're looking at somebody that is just kind of a handcuff to Bucky. I think that they're both going to be on the field. I think they're both going to work in and out, and I think they're going to cannibalize each other to a degree. But I think that when ADP is I always talk ADP, man. But if we're talking about somebody like this going in the 12th round, it's Kenny all day.
And that's exactly why I wanted him, because he's going to offer more than Rachaad White ever could in that backfield. And that's also bad news for anybody who believed in Sean Tucker, because, well, he's still buried back there until somebody gets hurt. And I saw Bucky Irving, as we're talking about him, got taken as Acts 238 Doers second running back. This person auto-drafted their entire draft, so unfortunately we're not going to be able to get the human factor factored into this, but if Chase Brown and Bucky Irving are my RBs 1 and 2, boy, am I worried about the season, because I am out on both of these guys as our RB1. I'd be fine with Brown as RB2 and Bucky Irving maybe as a back-end RB2 with upside on some weeks, but these are guys that I always see as just overvalued in ADP, and then they don't follow through when they're healthy. Granted, Bucky got hurt last year, so we can't put too much on it, but I mean, you just said it. Like, they don't. I talked about this on the Extra Point last week with Phil. They don't use Bucky in pass protection. They don't use him on the goal line, and they don't throw a ton of passes his way either. So I don't see how he's going to be that valuable, because he's not Derrick Henry.
Yeah, I'm definitely with you on Bucky. I think I'm in on Chase Brown this year, though, because of the PPR format and the way that they're used this guy. I think that we're looking at somebody that gets 7 targets, 8 targets, 7 targets, 8 targets. You know, he is getting the targets. Joe Burrow is seeking him out. I think that we're looking at somebody that could be a very good, valuable PPR format guy, you know, and especially if Joe Burrow is healthy all year. Last year was tough. I think that we looked at him in a different lens with Joe Burrow banged up. But you know what I always say, and I love dropping this, you always go in on Joe Burrow on even years and you fade Dak Prescott on even years. And if you look at the numbers, go look at it after the pod and look at Joe Burrow even years and Dak Prescott odd years, and you'll see that you got to change up these guys every year. You know, I'm in on Bengals this year, and I might be down on some Cowboys this year if you follow the trend.
Yeah, I think for the Bengals' sake, they should be embarrassed that they had to throw the ball to Chase Brown as much as they had to last year, because the offense was so somewhat predictable and stale. When you have Jamar Chase and T. Higgins on your team and you're throwing to the running back that much, something is terribly wrong with your offense. And for fantasy football value, obviously, we don't give a shit because the targets are happening. And we're like, yay, Chase Brown's alive. He's not an RB1 bust like I drafted him as last year. But that's also another reason I don't want to trust Chase Brown, because the vast majority of his value came from the back end of last season when people started healing up in the double-digit weeks after the bye week, and he was facing some defenses that were kind of disappointing between, the Steelers, the Ravens, the Bills barely being able to stop the run, and the Miami Dolphins can't even stop a stop sign. So, and the Cardinals. So, yeah, you've got upside weeks with Chase Brown for sure, but I would still be worried if he's my RB1 because that Bengals offensive line still sucks.
Yeah, it still sucks. I know they're making improvements to it, but I agree. That's where his PPR format, value comes from, essentially, because the offensive line is so tough. The dump offs are there. So, I kind of want that offensive line to still not be good to an extent, but like at the same time, I agree. There's volatility to that situation for sure.
Absolutely. So I did like the way that you finished your draft, taking some shots on some rookies to sit on. I wanted to ask you about Jonathan Brooks as well, a guy that, just like we were just talking about the Bengals, they drafted Eric All, who also tore that same ACL that he did in college, and he missed all of last season too. Jonathan Brooks had the same thing happen to him in 2024. Tore that same ACL that he tore in college, and he missed out. So Jonathan Brooks, though, is expected to return to this backfield as well. They didn't add really anybody worthwhile either. Trevor Etienne, Travis's younger brother, still needs to prove his worth. Chuba Hubbard is still Chuba Hubbard. They have to reluctantly feed him the ball because, well, they let Christian McCaffrey go, and the rookie draft picks have not been working out. And they signed A.J. Dillon, who hasn't been any good in like 5 years. So really, there's not really a whole lot of competition for Jonathan Brooks. They spent a second-round draft pick on the guy. So it's like, yeah, of course the Panthers want to see who they have in him, hoping that he's got something left. I haven't seen anything yet out of training camp that says Jonathan Brooks is going to be the guy to surpass Chuba Hubbard, but what do you think is going to happen with the Panthers backfield based off of what you've been reading? Are we looking at a backfield split, or are they once they work in Brooks, or are we going to see something different?
You know what? I think that this is another situation where it is hard to predict, but I do have a lot of hope for Jonathan Brooks being a value, especially in a redraft format when he is being taken this late. I think that, the talent is something that I was always in on. When Bijan Robinson got drafted, Jonathan Brooks got plugged into that team, and he was a set it, forget it demon. Obviously he had the major injury, and then he got into the NFL, and he got ready, and he was rehabbing, and he had the major injury again. I think that if you can get past this knee injury and really recover the right way, and we've seen it happen. I'm scared this is a J.K. Dobbins situation, but even J.K. Dobbins has had some good time in the NFL, and he's really had some good value when it comes to redraft formats. I know that he has these recurrent injuries that are tough, but if you can get past that as a player and you can get in a healthy situation, I think Jonathan Brooks is above and beyond anything they have on this team talent-wise. And I will take a shot on that. I think that we're looking at somebody that can catch passes, that has explosiveness, that can still, show the fantasy community that he was worth a second-round pick. There's a lot that is attached to this guy that you have to attach your wagon to and really just say, this is the guy in this offense. You're just really hoping that he can stay healthy. You know what? And when it's looking like this in the 14th round, and it's either a Tyrone Tracy or Brian Robinson, when we just talked about Brian Robinson being a direct handcuff, I will take the shot on a guy that could possibly be the RB1 on a team, as opposed to just, I like Jordan Mason. Chris Rodriguez could, honestly, he could have a split backfield. And then we're looking at Zach Charbonnet, who is starting on the pup, and I don't know where he's going to be at. So, he just feels like the right pick in this range for sure.
Yeah, for sure. I think, as much as I believe in Classic Mike's hype for Tyrone Tracy being the PPR guy out of that backfield, if we're looking at guys like James Conner or Zach Charbonnet, I don't mind Jonathan Brooks at that point if you really needed to take a shot on a running back, although I'm sure Brooks also would have been great in the 17th round as well, considering that he really hasn't had a chance to prove himself in the NFL. But like, if you swapped Brooks and Woody Marks, I don't hate it either.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, if Woody Marks, I just think that right now you're shooting from the hip. And the way that it fell a little bit, obviously Shakir was an auto pick for me, but then Omar Cooper is sitting there. And it's like you could swap these guys any which way. I'm okay with the way that the draft ended. Realistically, I think that, you're going to have to get some duds on this team because I will have to eventually pick up a kicker and in a defense somewhere down the road. So it's like, you take the shots. Shakir probably isn't staying on this team. And then you're looking at one of Woody Marks or maybe Jonathan Brooks fades out. But it is what it is, man. This is the game you play. You hope for upside, and then you kind of figure out the way the team lays out afterwards, for me at least.
100%. So, ladies, gentlemen, and all those in between or outside of it, we are going to start to wrap things up. As Monday Night Mock Drafts with Evan will have to do so, as my guest Mike Lamoureux will have to get ready for another live show on the Dynasty Rewind. Please tune in Dynasty Rewind on YouTube. He's gonna go live next on that YouTube channel. So in addition to that, be sure to follow Mike at Nerdboy Takes on Twitter. And like I said, subscribe to the Dynasty Rewind and check out Dynasty Degens anywhere you like to get your podcast. Mike, is there anything else that people should know from you that you need to plug?
You know what? Honestly, I'd spend enough time with it, but Dynatize, I think that I'm going to plug them one more time because it's definitely the values and the way that these draft boards go. I think that it's a big time edge when it comes to redraft, when it comes to how you're valuing players, trades, if you need help with it. It's really just a good platform to really get everything you need and something that you can trust as far as going into drafts or just going into season-long dynasty leagues or fantasy leagues for that matter.
Love to hear it. Dynatize.com. Folks, this is going to wrap up tonight's show. Be sure to tune in next week for an 8-team, 2-quarterback PPR Redraft League mock draft. Joining me for that one is going to be the great Ryan Weiss of Club Fantasy FFL, as well as the Football Guys. That's the guy who helped get me my first exposure to doing fantasy football shows, and I'm excited to have him back on the show. Don't miss it. This has been Monday Night Mock Drafts with Evan signing off. Have a great night. See you next week. Tune into the Dynasty Rewind to see more of Mike Lamoureux going live. See you next week, folks. Take care.